Vladimir Putin visited India, where he gave the interview to the local Indian media, India Today. During the interview, an Indian journalist told Putin that she has traveled to eastern Ukraine and spoken with the local people who were shocked by Putin's conduct of the war and the horrific cruelty with which he is destroying their cities with the Russian-speaking civilians living there. The journalist asked what Putin would say to these people.
President Sir, the fact that you're mentioning the history, and it brings me to what I did when the conflict was underway. I had traveled to Donetsk, I traveled to Luhansk, Zaporizhia, Kherson, and most of the people over there are Russian speaking. They speak Russian language. They were very disappointed with Kyiv that it was banned in eastern Ukraine. But they were also a little shocked that how is Putin doing this to us? We are his people. A lot of women I spoke to were in shock. So what do you have to say to people in eastern Ukraine who actually have families in Russia, who on a daily basis move from Ukraine to Russia? So what do you have to say to them?
Note that Indian journalists are pro-Russian. Even in their question, they use Russian narrative that Kyiv has banned Russian language in Ukraine. Of course, is not true. Russian language is not forbidden in Ukraine. I'm Russian speaking. I speak Russian and I can do it free every day in any region of Ukraine. But despite this, the Indian journalists are still surprised by the cruelty with which Putin treats the people and the territories in eastern Ukraine. The journalist says that Russian-speaking people in the east of Ukraine, in the south of Ukraine, are very frustrated about what Putin doing with them, how Putin destroying their cities, how Putin destroying their homes, and people shock about this horrible destruction, and people doesn't want Putin liberate them like this. This is completely undermine Putin's lie about that people on the east of Ukraine was waited for Russia and they supported Russian invasion. Of course, it's not true. And here is what Putin responded on this.
The answer is quite straightforward. These individuals presumably resided in those parts of Ukraine, specifically in the areas of the Lugansk and Donetsk region, that remained under the control of the Kyiv authorities at the time. Meanwhile, that part of the Lugansk or Donetsk region outside their control was being subjected to intense military action by the Kyiv authorities. We were consequently forced to extend support to those areas that had declared independence. That is the first point.
This is completely insane. According to the Putin's logic, Kyiv was destroying those parts of Donbass it didn't control. And to help that part of Donbass, which was destroyed by Kyiv regime, Putin began to destroy another part of Donbass, which was controlled by Kyiv. I'm using his own wording now, as he describes it himself. But isn't he any better? It turns out he is doing the same thing he accuses the Kyiv regime. He says there is some good part of Donbass that should not be destroyed, and there is some bad part of Donbass that can and should be destroyed. It's also true that Kyiv did not destroy the uncontrolled part of Donbass. Not a single city was destroyed there. There was nothing comparable to the destruction Russia inflicted on Bakhmut, Vuhledar, Pokrovsk and Mariupol. In Mariupol, only in Mariupol, several times more people died in the spring of 2022 than in all the previous years of the war. And that's not the end. Putin also described how the so-called referendum that he organized on captured part of Ukraine looked like.
Secondly, we provided people with an opportunity to express their will in an open referendum. Those who believed it was in their interest to join Russia voted accordingly. Those who did not were free to leave unhindered for other parts of the Ukrainian state. We have never placed any obstacles in the way of that choice.
So, in Putin's understanding, the referendum is when those who want to live in Russia vote for this, and those who don't want to live in Russia must go, must leave their hometowns and escape. Either you voting for Russia or you kicked out of your native land. Of course, if a really professional journalist had spoken to Putin, they have asked, "Listen, Putin, but you are doing the same that you accuse Kiev of. You're destroying Donbass, you're killing its residents, you already destroyed cities, whole cities. So how can you be better than those people whom you accuse?" But no one in India has asked Putin this simple question, and this is really very sad, and for me as Ukrainian also very sad to see how India welcomes this war criminal with blood on his hands, who bombed Ukrainian cities, who killed children, who killed women, and who destroyed the whole cities on the east of Ukraine. Indian journalists have been to Ukraine and seen how Ukrainians are suffering from what Putin is doing to them. But Putin is still a partner of the Indian government. How is this possible? India and Ukraine have much in common. India was also a victim of colonial aggression in the past. Ukraine is now such a victim of colonial aggression. How can India support invaders and colonizers after everything it has endured? This is insane, and I cannot understand this. My name is Denis Kazansky, I'm Ukrainian journalist. Here on this channel I'm talking about Russian-Ukrainian war and about what happened on post-Soviet space. Subscribe my channel, and if you like what I'm doing, support me on Patreon or PayPal.